Dumelang, sanbonani, molweni, absheni, ndimacheroni, nda, hello. Sinbingelele, greetings to you all and thank you for joining us once more. Thank you for the support that you've been showing the channel and by watching some of our videos, and also just thank you for some of the comments we've received, with regards to the past videos and the critique. They were very good. So we currently do this type of topic to provoke those type of discussion. So normally what we do here, not all of these things exhaustive. We just want to introduce these things. There's so much that we can talk about. So this at this time we'd like to talk about an organization, a very deep, secretive and evil organization that many, even I think to this day, do not know much about that organization. In 2018, just after Ramaphosa won, the presidency of the ANC and become, the South African president, he went and visited this organization. He was there. Mose Maimane was there. Terra Likota was there. Groenewald was there, and I think some other members of the DA were also there, to this organization. It's called the Broederbond, or the Afrikaner Broederbond, or Afrikaner Brotherhood. This was the powerful organization behind the National Party. If you still remember, in South Africa we had the National Party, which was started just during or after the start of World War I, and won the election in 1948. The Afrikaner Broederbond from 1948 to to the late 80s, up until when de Klerk took power and Mandela came out of prison and all of that. All the nationalist prime ministers of South Africa, by that I'm talking about FD Malan, I'm talking about your JD Strejom, I'm talking about your Dr. Verwoerd, I'm talking about your Mr. Foster and your P.W. Botha. All of these guys who were prime ministers in South Africa were part of this secret organization, the Broederbond. It was the very same organization that was behind the Sharpeville massacre and the various massacres that happened in Cape Town, in Eastern Cape, Pisho, the Pisho massacre. This was the very same organization that tormented Sobukwe up until he died in the late 70s. This was the organization that was involved in the crackdown of the youth. If you still remember, June 16, 1976, the youth protesting against the apartheid regime and colonialism. This was the organization that was behind the murder of Bantu Biko, the black conscious leader. Where after his death, one of the Broeder, a person who belongs to the Broederbond, who was the Minister of Justice, Mr. Kruger, after he heard about the death of Bantu Biko, he just said, his death leaves me cold, and these were the guys who planned and orchestrated his death. These were the same people who went and hunted Sol Plaatje and who hunted Nkgopotse Tiro and killed him in Botswana via the parcel bomb. They were a very secretive organization. They were a very strict and religious organization. They ruled every aspect of South African public life. You can talk about just like in the late 70s, when they won, the election, I think it was in 1977, if I'm not mistaken, they had about 12,000 members. And in Parliament, out of the 165 seats, these guys occupied 135 of those seats in Parliament. They were very powerful. They were very, very powerful, a very secretive and powerful group. They gave South Africa, the Republican status and the Bantustan policies, of Verwoerd. Remember, Verwoerd made South Africa, changed South Africa to be a Republican state. And then he also introduced the Bantustan policy, in the 60s. This was the work of the Burda Board, to which Dr. Verwoerd was deeply involved in. Now, as regard to its origin, this organization started as a result of British imperialism. If you still remember that the British, took over South Africa from the Dutch. And in 1901, 1902, the British and the Dutch, or the Boers, fought a war. And in 1902, the Boers were defeated by the British. And then just after the defeat, the British, because they wanted, to, as they rule in South Africa, to some extent, they wanted to have people whom they were going to be allied with, in their exploitation of South Africa. So they made peace, with the Boers in 1902, with the Boers in 1902, which is known as the Peace of Vereeniging. And then in 1910, the so-called Union of South Africa. South Africa was united under a constitutional democracy. The four republic, if you still, the Transvaal, Orange Free State, Cape Colony, and Natal, all had one constitution that governed all of them. But now, even with all those nice and beautiful stuff, the Boers were still oppressed, culturally oppressed, economically oppressed, and politically oppressed, because the British were, the ruling guys. And something happened just after the war in 1902. Many Afrikaner women and children were taken into concentration camp by the British, and 26,000 of them were killed, via starvation and other means of torture. And so, to the Boers, that was, an insult, and it was something that they never forget, what the British did to them. So as a result of those concentration camps and the war which they fought, the Anglo-Boer War which they fought in 1901 to 1902, and after that Boers, children and women being taken into the concentration camps, and then even after there was this so-called Union of South Africa in 1910, the Boers still were behind the British economically, politically, culturally, and otherwise, and they were also oppressed by the very same British. So that gave birth to what Afrikaner nationalism, and there were other guys, poets, writers, who sort of like wrote about the sufferings of the Boers. So in 1918, just after the end of World War I, the Boers decided to form, an organization, because within the broader white society, they were denied the right to partake in those various, white organizations. They were excluded. They were discriminated, even though they were white people, but they were not wanted, by the British and other Europeans, because they were viewed as being, uncivilized, barbaric, sort of like they were looked upon as the same as, these savage natives. So the Boers were rejected. And so they decided in 1918, even though they were part of the political ruling class, they decided in 1918 to form an organization, with the help. At the beginning there were only 3 guys and a reverend of the Dutch Reformed Church. I think Reverend Nude, if I'm not mistaken. These 3 guys, I think it was Van der Merwe, if I'm not mistaken, Van der Merwe, who were the earlier people who partook in the formation of the Broederbond. It was H.W. Klopper, H.W. Van der Merwe, and then D.H.C. Du Plessis. So these were the very first guys who formed, what we later called the Broederbond. And then they were helped by the Dutch Reformed Church. They were a strictly Afrikaner Calvinistic group. So they formed this organization, and then it became some sort of like a cultural religious organization in 1918. And then many people began, they begin the process of recruiting other Afrikaners into this organization. And then in 1921, they decided to make this organization a secret society. You see, at the heart of this organization was the fact that in fact the key word, that is at the heart of this organization is the word domination. They wanted to dominate South Africa on behalf of the Afrikaner people. So they formed this secret organization. It started as a cultural religious organization, and then as time went on, in 1921 it became a secret society. And then as time went on, it grew and attracted people, from various spheres in the society. You had pastors, preachers, theologians, economists, engineers, historians, teachers, all the various spheres where the Afrikaner people worked. They were recruited into this organization. Now it had already become a secret society. People such as Barry Hertzog, in the 20s, tried to fight. Even though he was an Afrikaner, he tried to fight against this organization because he was more of the togetherness between the Afrikaner and the British. He wanted the Afrikaner and the British to be together to exploit and oppress, to exploit South Africa and oppress the natives. He wanted the Afrikaner and the British to be in the same level, and the British did not want that, but Hertzog tried to fight, and when the Broederbond, began to gain more momentum, under, leaderships of people such as Malan, Hertzog tried to fight, against that society, and he failed. The society continued, surviving, continued growing, in membership and also in influence. Now, up until 1948, where it gained political power. And then when it gained political power, they then made sure that they use, the laws, the policies, the power that they had to improve the lives of the Afrikaner, and they wanted to make South Africa a country which was dominated by the Afrikaner, and they utilized their secret society to then achieve that goal of Afrikaner domination of the South African region. So the Bible tells us something. Remember, this was a a deeply religious secret society. Religious in the sense of it was a Christian organization of that Afrikaner Calvinistic beliefs. So there was, if one talks about Afrikaner nationalism, it was fully embraced by this society, by this secret society. Their socio-economic ideology was white supremacy. The theological belief was of the Afrikaner Calvinistic bent. In Jeremiah 8, Jeremiah 8, if you can just read the whole chapter, Jeremiah 8, we see pagan worship within the temple. We see the elders of Israel worshipping, creatures, the created things, and turning their backs against Yahweh. And God says something there. If you read in Ezekiel chapter 8 verses 12, God speaking to Ezekiel said, "Son of man, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in darkness? Have you seen what the elders of Israel are doing in darkness? Each at the shrine of his own idol. They say, the Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land." Again he said, "You will see them doing things that are even more detestable." So this is a pagan worship, which was done in the secret places, by the elders of Israel who were supposed to be leading people to Yahweh. Now these people are turning to idols, and then leading the people astray. They are worshipping false god. They are involved in demonic worship. And then also in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 11, Paul speaks about, deeds of darkness. Paul in Ephesians chapter 5 verses 11 says, "Have nothing to do with fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. For it is shameful even to mention what the disobedience do in secret, but everything exposed by the light becoming visible." So, the Bible tells us that we must not have anything to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness. The Afrikaner Buddha Board was, an organization of darkness. This was an organization behind the massacres, the murders, the discrimination, the racist policies, the destruction of families, the corruption of societies, and the undermining of our values, the perversion of the biblical message, and giving Christ a bad name among the Gentiles, which at that time were the native people. The society claimed to be Calvinistic. The society claimed to be Christian, and they were involved in secret societies. They made secret oaths. People had to swear, that in the name of God, they had to make an oath that they will never reveal the secrets of the organization. There were certain ceremonies, where people were initiated into this organization. It was simply a satanic organization, but they claimed to be a Christian Calvinistic organization. And so they were working with the various prime ministers of South Africa. They had, various cells throughout Southern Africa. By 1977, the membership of this organization was at 12,000, and they had 800 cells, across Southern Africa. They had, cells in definitely many were in South Africa, others were in Namibia, others were in Zimbabwe, others were as far as Tanzania and Zambia. These guys were so powerful and secretive. So what happened is that in the late 70s, after the killing of Stephen Biko, there was a member within the Brouder Board who could not take it. He was troubled by his conscience, especially after Bantu Biko was killed. And then he went to the Sunday Times, at that time, and went to these guys who wrote this book, the Super Afrikaner, inside the Afrikaner Brouder Board. This was Ivory, Wilkinson, and Wilkins, and Hans Stridon. So these are the guys who sort of like took the information which was provided by this guy, who was a member of the Brouder Board, who had his conscious trouble, because after the killing of Bantu Biko, he then saw that he's involved in some of the most dirtiest organization in the world. This organization was composed of Afrikaner white men. Women were not even allowed within this organization. No one could just enter in this organization. It had its headquarters right here in Auckland Park, and at some point in time, even the South African SAPC was run by these guys. They were more sympathetic to the Nazis, the Hitler, they loved Hitler, they loved what the Germans were doing, and they wanted to implement that here in South Africa, and wanted to destroy native South Africa. They wanted to reduce the population of Southern Africa and put them there, in what was called homelands. This was, even though the policy came with the British, but these guys, sort of like took it into deeper levels, and we saw that with Dr. Verwoerd, who was a zealous member of this secretive organization. And it was also deeply involved with the churches, with the various Afrikaner churches. There's this tendency of just looking at the Dutch Reformed Church. Yes, the Dutch Reformed Church is a perverted cultic church. That's not a Christian church. But there are other churches, who were also deeply involved with the secretive organization. And they took those racist policies and implemented them within the Christian church. And that was the biggest problem. So even today, when you see organizations such as your AfriForum who are talking about, there's a genocide in South Africa, they are afraid, that white survival in South Africa is threatened. The Afrikaner language is threatened in South Africa. These were the very main objections. These were the very main fears, that these Brouder Board guys created, in order to justify whatever they were doing. Right now, the AfriForum and your Solidarity movement, they are creating a propaganda claiming that, there's a genocide in South Africa, and whites are being killed, Afrikaners are being killed, and their language has been threatened. The Brouder Board started in the very same way, and probably the AfriForum and your Solidarity movement are still influenced by this secretive organization. This organization is in the same level as your Illuminati and your Freemasons, same level, because they are both secretive organizations who are doing fruitless deeds and evil deeds, in the dark, in order to make sure that they dominate the world. These are organizations that are deeply motivated by greed and hatred, and they hate God. So yeah, we just wanted to share to us that please don't forget to share your critiques, your comments on this ultra Christian secretive organizations. And this is a warning, that as Christian we need to be careful not to be involved in this type of things. The Bible warns us, instead of being involved, the Bible says we need to expose them, and this is what we are currently doing. Share your thoughts, your feelings, your comment, your critiques in the comment section. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye bye.